Welcome to Beyond Borders Dilemma podcast. I am your host, Naomi Menu. For many international students, academia feels like the safest or most logical next step to take after graduation. But the transition from being a student to becoming an academic professional is rarely explained clearly to us. It is different for different fields. STEM, for instance, you have to go through postdoc, STEM being the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And we also have the social sciences. Today's episode is to explain the academic career pipeline for immigrants and international students with social sciences background. We will talk about what really happens after graduation, how to secure faculty roles, the hidden challenges of visa, publishing pressure, and identity shifts. This episode is about what happens after the degree, the realities, the pressures, the strategies that help people survive and grow in academia. My guest today is a really good friend of mine. She is Dr. Tennecia Dacass. Dr. Dacass is a Jamaican-born first-generation college graduate and associate professor of economics at Central Washington University, where she is a tenured faculty member. She is an applied microeconomist, specializing in labor and public economics with research that focuses on how labor market regulations affect immigrants and how public policy shapes outcomes for children and families. Welcome to my podcast, my friend.
Thank you so much. I'm happy that my experiences can be shared here and hopefully will help someone else.
Great. We will dive right into it. Can you tell us a very short academic journey from you being in Jamaica to becoming an immigrant professor in the United States?
Sure. Yes. I think that, the aspect of being a professor has always been attractive to me. I recall summers in Jamaica teaching my younger siblings and my cousins. So I think there was some period in time where I wanted to teach. Fast track, maybe that was about primary school, less than 16. Did my undergrad in Jamaica, did my master's in Jamaica, and then I had always wanted to have some kind of impact working with some policy organization. I joined the central bank after my master's program and was working on monetary policy. So monitoring interest rates and inflation, unemployment, production. Those were some of the things that I did in that role. After a few years there, I didn't feel as accomplished or as happy as I thought I would have been, given that this was a desire while doing my undergrad and master's. Mm-hmm. And so, some mentors, they told me, well, Tennecia, you're so bright. You should definitely go on and do more schooling and get a PhD. I wasn't really thinking about being a professor after that discussion anyway. I think I kind of stumbled onto academia in the sense that I came to the US in my mid-20s, some people would say late 20s, to do my PhD. And while studying at Kansas State University, I really enjoyed teaching, as I was a graduate teaching assistant. Mm-hmm. And so after 5 years, I was sure that that's what I wanted to do post-graduation.
So I think you just covered a little bit of my second question, which was, when did you first consider academia as a career path?
So I've always enjoyed teaching. I was always good at school. And I was not the student who my mom would have to say, girl, go take up your book. It was something that I was strong in, and I saw how happy my family was when I did well at school. And so it was always something that I liked, going to school, teaching others. But, being a teacher is different from being a professor. And that's kind of one of the things that I found out, later on. And so even though I had a passion for teaching, it was not until doing my PhD, and I started my PhD because I wanted more from my career. So it was when I was a graduate student that I decided, yes, academia is something that attracts me, that complements my strengths.
Okay. So you just mentioned being a teacher is different from being a professor. I want to know more about that.
Yes, I am a first gen college student. And so I only went to university or did my undergrad because my friends were applying to university.
To
Believe it or
university.
not,
Wow.
I was always a strong student, but at the end of high school, I didn't have a path, a well structured, well defined path. And so I just didn't understand what to expect as an undergraduate student. I understood, after a couple of years there, and I did my master's again because others saw that I was a strong student and believed that I could do well in the master's program. I did my PhD again because mentors saw that I was capable and encouraged me. And so when I was enrolled in graduate school at Kansas State, I understood that professors, they went to their classes and they taught and they would talk about their research. So I understood that, being a professor, you're doing research and you're teaching. But I didn't realize that the roles that you take on as a professor is more than being a teacher in the classroom and doing your research.
Yeah.
You are doing service to your community as a professor, and that is actually a part of your role description. You are advising students, you are developing curriculum, you are serving your community, and all of these are roles that I did not think about before getting my first job as in
Yeah.
academia. Yeah.
That's a really interesting thought. And honestly, I was thinking the same line as you. Like you just have you go give your lectures and probably mentor your students that you supervise. But yeah, this is such an eye opener.
Yes. So if you
Yeah.
ask any professor, they would say, well, my job is teaching research service. And that service area is like a black hole. And the level of service varies based on the institution that you're employed in. And that service would include mentoring students, developing
Yeah.
curriculum, serving the
Yeah.
community. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very interesting. Well, what other alternatives were you weighing on at the time that you were also considering being a professor?
Right. So I decided to be a professor in grad school. And so this is, after leaving Jamaica, spending 5 years in the US, because the first time I came to the US for more than 3 months was as a graduate student. So you can imagine, that culture shock and that feeling of being isolated from your family. Anywho,
Yeah.
so I was in the graduate program towards the end of my degree, and I knew I wanted to get the highest return on my investment. And that meant, unfortunately, not going home immediately. And so, as a F1 visa holder, I thought about working for the government in the US. Again, working on policy. My research surrounds immigration and labor market regulations like licensing and occupational licensing and certification. So I could work at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or I could work for a labor security department within a state. Those were all attractive. I could work at the World Bank. So I was considering all of these things, so policy or academia. But I think most of my application towards the end of my degree program focused on academia because of the requirements. When you are applying, you see US citizen
Oh,
required.
yeah. That restrictions. You
Yes,
feel like you can offer so much, but the restriction.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And because of that restriction, I didn't even think about industry, right? So it was either government. Well, you could think about a private school, but it was either teaching or some other government organization working on
Mm-hmm.
policy. Yeah. And
Yeah,
because of the
yeah,
visa restriction.
yeah, great. And since you were working in a bank after your master's, right? So
Right.
did anyone encourage or discourage you to come back home because you already had a secure job than pursuing academia?
Right.
And whichever way, if you could explain it more.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I decided to leave Jamaica and pursue a PhD, because as I said, as a first gen, I am just thinking about what is immediately in front of me and very often not looking in the long run or over the long run.
Mm-hmm.
So when I decided to come to the US, it was okay, I'm going to do my PhD. I don't know what I'm going to do after that.
Mm-hmm.
But during that decision making process, it was my mentors who had followed a similar path and saw that I had the skills that would make me successful.
Yeah.
But I was in Jamaica. I was highly educated. The universities in my country at the time, the premier universities, they didn't offer PhDs. And so having a master's, was a signal that you are highly qualified.
Mm.
So here I was, a highly qualified economist doing well at the central bank, one of the
Yeah.
premier employers in the
Mm-hmm.
country. My family was like, "You're crazy, girl. Why are you going?" Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of all of the uncertainty surrounding, leaving your job, just that feeling of being alienated or
Yeah.
being different. I am from
Mm-hmm.
a predominantly black country. And
Mm-hmm.
so all of the different challenges that I would have encountered in the US as a minority, as a graduate student, on a graduate student income, my family, they were like, you need to be cautious, right?
Yeah.
Maybe think through this properly. So I got some encouragement and some words of caution when making the decision to do my PhD. And I think
Yeah.
I got something similar when I decided to transition from PhD now into the world of work.
Work.
Going home would have put me again in a very good position because, having this terminal degree would make me highly competitive. And then I would have all the resources of family, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that again, my family would step in and provide some words of caution. Maybe you should come home. You did well. And then when I told them, oh, I am applying for many jobs, again, they were saying, if you came here, you're guaranteed a job. So yes, so my family is always trying to, put some
Yep.
brakes on
Breaks
things and
on
like,
it. Yeah.
slow down. You always have home to return to. Yes.
Yeah. Now, let's say you've already applied for the role, you've
Mhm.
gotten it. What was your first academic role after the graduation? After you graduated, now you have the job.
Yeah.
What was the first role that you played?
Right. So my first role is at the institution where I am currently employed. So I'm still in my first job. I was hired as a tenure track assistant professor of economics at
Mm.
Central Washington University.
And
Yes.
what were the specifics? Were you like only lecturing or research with lecturing?
Right. Thank you for saying that. So coming out of the economics department at Kansas State, we argue that our comparative advantage is teaching because we
Mm-hmm.
start teaching from year 2 of 5. And so at the end, we have more than 3 years of experience. We have lots of training. And that's
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I would encourage, current PhD students. So when you are a PhD student, especially if you are a graduate teaching assistant, you
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure that you are teaching different types of classes in terms of different modalities. So you want to teach in person, online, hybrid,
Mm-hmm.
high flex, so that you
Mm-hmm.
can really enrich your resume or your CV.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to apply for any kind of formal training. Professional development is always looked at favorably, I guess
Mm-hmm.
everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to try to accomplish some awards or some recognition for your teaching.
Yeah.
So I knew my comparative advantage. And so I knew that I would receive a job at a university that really valued teaching. It happened. I got interviews at liberal arts schools and regional universities.
Mm-hmm.
And I got employment at a regional university. At the time, it had about 10,000 students. So we were teaching relatively small classes, and teaching was the most important thing. So
Yeah.
I was hired to teach, to do research and service, but I had to make sure that I maintained high quality SEOIs, innovation in the classroom,
Mm-hmm.
experiential learning. Yes, teaching was valued.
Yeah. And like you said, regarding the remotes and hybrid and all those things, I guess at your time, COVID had not yet come. So it wasn't like a big thing that people look for because everything was done in person.
Right.
But
Yes.
now a lot has changed after COVID. So
Yes.
that would be a really key thing to add to your CV.
Yes, yes. When I was applying for jobs, my professor would say, mention that you are teaching large classes, small classes, upper level, lower level, but now you have to think about those as well as modality. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. And how did you secure that first position? Because I guess a lot of competition, right?
Yes, yes. I know that hundreds of people applied for my job. I would say that I was able to secure the position. And even though I applied for and did my interview before COVID, I think the strategies I used are applicable to today. So I got teaching award. I did training to improve my teaching style, my pedagogy. I spent a lot of time practicing, talking about my research. I also did like a demonstration. So at that time you would have your interview, and after your interview you would have a fly out to the location, and that campus visit, it required a teaching demonstration. It required talking about my research, interacting with the colleagues there in the department as well as the college or the wider community. And I think because my CV had factors that interest the school, so it signaled that I was a good teacher. And because I really took time to practice and prepare, that kind of stood out. I remember them saying, when I had the teaching demonstration, I brought handouts for students. I knew the students' names, like after, the first 5 minutes of talking with them.
Wow.
And so you really have to be aggressive and understand what is rewarded, and then make sure that you perform based on your audience. Yeah.
Aside the school that you were in, did you go to other schools for similar thing? And how many were there?
Right. So maybe to put it into context, I can tell you about the market for academic jobs in economics at that time. I say at that time because post-COVID, things change.
Oh, yeah.
So it's quite at that time in 2019, the market was really centralized. So I sent out applications between September and November of 2018. January 2019, early January 2019, we had the American Economics Association conference. And at that conference, all the schools that are looking for jobs, so all the individuals demanding workers would meet with the supply of workers. This is me talking like,
Yeah, now you're talking in economics terms.
You would have these hotel rooms where you're going for your interview, or you would have your interviews in different conference rooms, all in one local area. And I remember that we had our batch of interviews because the conference at the time was in Atlanta, Georgia. And so I I sent out 130 job applications, more than
That's
100.
very impressive.
My goodness. Yes, I know because it's just so competitive, you know?
Oh my gosh.
And I got 4 interviews. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember how devastated I felt because, you know, the other option was to go home, and if you return home, you're just not making as much money, and
Mm-hmm.
after investing so much time, you want to
Yeah.
get the best return on your investment.
Yeah.
We
And
had
even aside the money, you also want to acquire some more training on like actual practicing whatever you came to study. So
Yes.
that, yeah,
Yes, and if you
definitely.
think about like access to data, the US has such rich data, and
Yeah.
a lot of my research focuses on secondary data sources. And so,
Data source.
yeah, working in academia in the US was like my first best, was
Yeah.
and so I did my 4 interviews over that weekend that where they had the conference, and I received three invitations for flyouts.
Okay.
And my current job, I went there first, and I just loved the place. So,
Mm.
Central Washington University is in the middle of Washington State, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just so beautiful, and the air is dry, and there's lots to do outside. And if you compare Washington with Kansas,
Kansas.
there's just no comparison in terms of the ability to enjoy the outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
Washington just
Yeah.
wins, I guess.
Yeah.
So I was excited by the interactions I had with the students. These were students largely from Hispanic communities, a lot of them being first gen, and I felt like I could speak to them and have an
Mm-hmm.
impact.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed my fly out. I think maybe 2 days after that fly out with my current employer, I had another fly out. And I won't say, who else I went
Yeah.
to,
Yeah. That's cool.
but yes, but it was just not as great. I did all the things that I did at the other school, but I was just not, maybe because I was already excited about the first one.
No.
I did my best because, of course, you need a job. But
Exactly.
yes. And then
Yeah.
by the time I was getting ready for my third flyout, I got my offer.
Mm.
And so I didn't go on the third flyout. So yeah.
Okay, great. I mean, sometimes you just know.
Yes.
Like sometimes when you get to a place, you just know that you belong here. So yeah, it makes choosing it easier.
Right,
Because
right.
I mean, let's say you went for all four and you liked all four. Now you have to like really sit down and check the pros and cons and all.
Yes.
So yeah,
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
glad you figured it out as fast as possible.
As fast as possible. Yes, yes. 'Cause so by the end of January 2019, or maybe even February early, I had a job. So I was one of the
Great.
lucky ones because, very often candidates are there into June, where the
Mm-hmm.
semester is over and still
It's
no job.
over. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
great. What actually surprised you about the transition?
So I think so. I was, excited about teaching and doing research. And I arrived at Central Washington, and I had so much commitment. I now
Mm-hmm.
had service commitments. I had to teach my classes, which were new preps, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had my dissertation chapters or papers from my dissertation that I wanted to take to
To
publish,
publish?
right, to submit to a journal. And I was just so overwhelmed the first year.
Mm-hmm.
I just could not find time to dedicate to all the different areas that needed my attention.
Yeah.
And I was also really surprised by the job. Yes. So I think, and even today, I still struggle, with time
Yeah.
management, and also you're second guessing yourself, This was a very good job. I think I was one of the few from my cohort that received a tenure track job. And
Mm-hmm.
so I constantly would ask myself, am I capable? That
Yeah.
imposter syndrome.
Yeah, we would definitely get into that.
Okay, yes, yes. So I think just I struggled to balance it all in the
Yeah.
first couple of years.
Yeah. What could you, was there any like skill that you realized that you didn't have as a student once you became a professor in academia?
Maybe how to interact with students.
You taught for what, 4 years as a graduate teaching assistant. So I guess
Yes,
you had a lot of it.
I don't know. So I think that being a graduate teaching assistant,
Mm-hmm.
and I did have my independent class, but students weren't coming to me for career advice.
Mm-hmm.
They would take my class and they would query a grade or they would come for extra support, but they
Mm-hmm.
weren't asking about, okay, why should I do economics? How does
Mm.
that set me up for success
Okay.
after graduation? And I think it was that more mentoring piece.
Mentoring.
Yes,
Yep. Yes.
that's the
Yes.
skill that I don't think I had very well, or I had to use. And so I had to start developing this skill of being a mentor, of understanding who my audience is, and making sure that whatever advice I provide was well suited. For example, I did all of my study as an economist in social sciences, and so
Mm-hmm.
we focused a lot on the theory, and we talked about going on to do research. But then I came into an economics department that was in the College of Business. And a
Mm.
lot of our students, if they don't go to college, then they work. And so the fascination, the excitement about theory was not there as much. They were more
Mm.
thinking, okay, how can I apply this? You know, what roles will I need this? So
Yeah.
I had to pivot and make sure that my advice, my recommendations was suited to the type of
Their
student I
needs. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about a little bit about publishing and funding because, I mean, as a tenured professor for the sciences, that is a requirement. Is
had.
that the same for social science?
Yes, yes. So, when you are hired, you're told, so I am not at an R1, so research is not the focus, but
Mm-hmm.
you cannot get tenure without publishing. And I am also in a business school that is accredited, AACSB accredited. And so research is one of the requirements to remain eligible to teach. So research is
Mm-hmm.
important. However, the type of research that I do, it's low cost, I would say. And so I have requested and applied for localized grants, grants within the institution for
Mm-hmm.
conference travel or for working on maybe administering a survey among students. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't have as much experience applying for large grants.
Okay.
Let me tell you about my publishing experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I got early tenure, and for early tenure, I had to demonstrate that I was a good teacher, that I had more than the number of papers that were required for tenure. So,
Okay.
showing that I went above and beyond. And I think, because my dissertation topics, they were so interesting. I looked at immigration and licensing. I was able to publish in a very good journal from my dissertation.
Mm-hmm.
Ongoing, like while as a professor, I think I surrounded myself with people who were excited about publishing and who were not necessarily at my university. So they were aspiring to be at an R1 or they were at an R1. That accountability kind of, I think, motivated my research ambitions. So I
Mm-hmm.
had a group of friends who I also met at a workshop, again, professional development. And each month we have a check in from our mentor. How
Mm-hmm.
are the projects going?
Yeah.
And then people are sharing that they have submitted a paper. And, that sense of accountability or also seeing what your peers are doing, how productive they are, that
Mm-hmm.
really encourage that
Yeah.
publish.
Yeah.
Also, I must say though, Naomi,
Okay. Yeah, go
also with
ahead.
my publishing, I took advantage of the resources I had. My school focuses on teaching. I published in journals that focused on pedagogy. So I tried a new experiment in my class. I was able to publish that. I
Mm-hmm.
also, my school focuses on faculty student research. So I published with my undergrads. And so I think taking advantage of your unique situation may
Yeah.
also help you to be more productive.
That is fantastic because some people would think only graduate students can publish, but even with undergrad, sometimes they do generate really good data. Or yours being a secondary data, they can also bring up ideas that could help in publishing. So I'm glad that you didn't only think that it's only publishing is only for graduate students, and
Right.
I'm happy it worked out for you too. Well, right now we will dive into identity and professional shifts. How did it feel to go from student to colleague or faculty? Now we are talking about feelings.
Yes, yes. Someone told me, I think it was my major advisor when I was going on the job market. He said, call me by my first name. We are no
Mm,
longer student advisor,
teacher.
teacher. We are now colleagues. And so, because I was told that early out, when I went for my job interview, I treated my future colleagues as colleagues. So if
Mm,
they asked for a preferred name, I would use that preferred name, or I would even ask them, so what is your preferred name? Right.
mm,
And so I think I tried to make that switch as quickly as possible because of the advice that I got.
yeah. And okay.
No, go ahead.
No, I was even about to say that back home you were expected to call your professors professor, right? Or
Yes.
lecturer. But
Yes.
here it's very common to call
Yes.
your advisor even with a first name.
Yes.
So it makes
Very
it
casual.
flexible, very casual. Yeah,
Yes. That was definitely a shock coming
it
to
was.
the US and interacting with professors in the US. They're like,
Yeah.
call me Tennecia. What? Not Dr. So and so?
Yeah. With all the accolades. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So I think because of that advice, I was aware that I want these individuals to see me as a colleague. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm going to do everything to get that desired outcome. But of course, first gen, new, new to the profession, there are points in time when you feel as if, you are not an equal, or you're not as qualified to be in the space, to be providing advice, to
Mm-hmm.
telling your colleagues that they need to change. Yes, but I think when that happens, you need a core group of people who you can share your insecurities with, and
Yeah.
then have them reassure you that yes, you have the training,
You're great. Yeah.
you you deserve to be here. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I guess my follow-up question was the imposter syndrome, which you just hinted on. So, I mean, I guess that's a really great advice to have people to fall on
Yeah.
to keep encouraging you. Were there other ways you handled it aside that?
Yeah, I guess sometimes I really messed up. Like, I made myself small at times. And I think that always happens. So I think, so I must say that my immediate supervisor, I think, also played a key role in making me feel like I belong. I recall always seeing things that I want to change. I am someone
Mm,
with lots of ideas. And so I came into this space and I decided that, hey, we need to start more projects with students. Hey, I don't like how the learner outcomes for this course is. We should update it,
mm-hmm,
to be in line with trends.
mm-hmm.
And my supervisor, he was just like, okay, yeah, you want to do it? Run with it. So I think that
That
environment
is really good.
really helped me. I
Mm,
was in a very supportive environment. And so, I wasn't concerned to say, no, I don't agree, or to say, let's try this, and then I would always
yeah.
receive that support. So right now, as the chair of the department, as a more senior professor, I'm always looking at the younger tenure track faculty, and I want to support them just as much.
No.
So, yeah, so I got support from my supervisor. I got support from my core group. And I mean, we're always going to feel unsure. We're always going to feel as if, others know more than us. But I
Mm-hmm.
think personally, we have to try and remind ourselves of all the things that we've accomplished
Yeah.
and say that you got a teaching award, so of course you're a good teacher. You completed your PhD, so of course you're knowledgeable, and you can. And I'm always trying to keep learning, to try and keep improving myself. So
Yeah.
that's what I
Yeah.
do.
You definitely belong. I mean, I remember I used to have a colleague who was like that, and I kept telling him, "You are here because you have something to give. So just focus on the work and don't feel small in the space."
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes it does happen as humans.
Right.
So I'm glad that you figured it out. And congratulations on becoming the chair of the department. That is very impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
got tenure, and they're like, okay, we'll give you 1 year, then next time you're a chair. Like, okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
that was really impressive. And one last thing, how do you set boundaries in an environment that rewards people overworking on trying to prove themselves?
I, that is something that I am still working on. you
Mm.
know I do research on immigration, and
Mm-hmm.
so I strongly believe that there is this selection bias. So individuals choose to migrate because they believe that the returns from migrating is better than staying wherever you are located. And so we
Mm-hmm.
have very smart individuals migrating,
Yeah.
and maybe that also helped. The fact that I am researching migration, that kind of helped to reduce the level of insecurity that I would have had otherwise. Because I
Mm.
know that I am one of the high achievers from my country.
From
And
your
so,
country. Yeah.
of course, I belong here, and I was able to overcome the hurdle of new culture, of being told that I don't speak English because I don't speak American English.
Yeah.
I do think that the research in that area helps me.
Yeah.
Right now, I am the mother of a young child. I recently tenured. I am leading a department. I am also trying to do research. I am working on more committees than I would like, but I am often so excited by the new shiny thing.
I guess, it has its own pros and cons. I mean,
Yes, yes. So I don't think I have yet identified, you know, boundaries or how to create good boundaries. Yes, I think I'm just working all the time, but I
yeah.
enjoy it, so I think that's okay.
That is good though. That is really good. For me, I try not to work when I get home because home is home. But sometimes your mind keeps like thinking because I do research, so there is always something going on in my mind.
Yes,
Sometimes I have to pick up paper and write it down. Like
yes, yes,
ideas come at random times.
yes,
So
yes, yes.
yeah.
And so I guess I would say, just based on what you just described, I would say that I am a schedule. I'm a rigid person, I think, quite disciplined. So I
Mm-hmm.
know that in the afternoons between certain hours, then it's time to make dinner and, put my son down for bed and talk about school. So I protect certain sections of the day, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I am not someone who says I won't work on the weekend. Not there yet. Or I won't work at home because, as you said, sometimes you have a project that you're thinking about, or you're reading something and you get an idea. And so I feel like work is always bleeding through to the
Yeah.
different areas of my life. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it goes for most people, especially people who do academic stuff. So
Yeah.
I guess you hinted a little bit about mentorship
Hmm.
and networking. So how important were your mentors in this journey?
Yeah, I think my mentors were incredibly important. As I said, I am a first generation college student. And so support from people I admire has been a constant throughout my life,
Mm-hmm.
just because to get feedback or guidance on career decisions or academic decision, it was
Mm-hmm.
always someone from the outside. And so I think everyone should have a mentor, and you should have a
Exactly.
couple. You should have a couple mentor.
That's true. That's true. I totally agree with you. Yeah. And a mentor, I would say it's not only your advisor who is like the
No.
known to be your mentor, but like especially in the field that you study, you can pick a few mentors that you can. There are people you could easily flow with than even your advisor. So it's
Yes.
good to pick a few here and there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, like I'm always taking advantage of, going to conferences and talking to individuals or attending the different workshops at these conferences.
Mm-hmm.
I am also open to sending someone an email, that I've never met before because I read their paper and they're impressive. And,
Mm.
asking them for feedback on a paper I'm writing, or or if I have some idea for some experiment in class and I know of someone else who has done that, I am open to looking up their emails and sending them a request.
That's amazing.
Yes,
Yeah.
so definitely. What I don't know, you have cold call. Don't know if that's cold email. I'm not sure if that's a term, but just reaching out to people who you admire
Mm-hmm.
and asking for the help that you need is very important.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. What networking strategies actually work for you? Because I think the community that we live in now, the country we live now, everything is based on networking. So,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
worked for you?
Yeah, so I'm just thinking about, in terms of professionally, where I have met the most influential people. And I
Hmm.
would say just attending conferences has helped.
Yeah.
Um, attending conferences and making sure that you make the most of it. So
Yeah.
you go to conferences, going to conference and walking around with your professional card, your
Yeah.
information, and collecting that information from
Yeah.
others you admire, and then following up. I've done that a lot. I have gone to a presentation about childcare and women's mental health, and I'm like, okay, wonderful presentation. Can I have your card? And as soon as the conference is over, I'm following up, asking them what their next project is, getting ideas for my project.
Mm-hmm.
I think I am introverted, but I understand the
Are
benefit of
you?
pushing. Maybe I'm an ambivert, in the middle. But
Yeah.
yeah, but also, if for example at work, I would reach out to whomever my supervisor is and ask them for a mentor. I just
Mm.
started a new role and I'm learning. And so, during the first couple of months of any new role, there's a lot of uncertainty and, a lot of feelings of as if you are not entitled, because I'm thinking, do they really think that I could do this chair job?
Yeah.
But whenever I feel that level of insecurity, I'm always like, okay, so who has done it well? Can I peer with them? And then I would and I would meet for coffee, and I'd be like, so someone from across campus, I'd meet with them for coffee, and I would
Mm-hmm.
ask them all the things. How did you become successful in this
Yeah.
particular area? What are some of the tips that you can give me? So I would say just reaching out to people you admire, um,
Mm-hmm.
at your job or via email, and also the idea that every couple of months I interact with other economists. So at conference.
That's great. Absolutely great.
Yeah, I know now,
Girl, you are
like,
you are killing it.
no, I know now, like, you could also look at individuals LinkedIn page. I have done that
Mm-hmm.
as well,
Yeah, I've done that too.
and be
Yeah.
like, oh, I see you're a chair. I'm going into this role. Let's, talk about, whatever. you've done to be successful, or I see someone celebrating an accomplishment. I'm like, oh, you published here? What are some tips that you would give to individuals who want
Yeah.
to publish?
Yeah, always ready to learn. That is amazing. Yeah. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your long-term reality checks. Knowing what you know now, would you still choose academia? Oh,
I
that's
think
a big
so.
sigh.
No, I'm sighing because I am at a point in my life where I'm really doing a lot of reflection,
Mm-hmm.
and I think so. I think I would still choose academia because because I can see the impact,
Yeah.
maybe not immediately, but over the 4 year or more that students are with us,
Mm-hmm.
I can see transformation. And that kind of reassures me that, yes, I contribute to society, as a professor, because I am changing lives. I have students who were just so introverted and so insecure. And at the end, they're leading clubs, they're presenting at conferences, they
That's
are
good.
just stepping into all of their unique talents. So, yes, I would be a professor.
That is incredible.
Yes, yes. I would also be a professor because I feel like this is the only profession where I can do research that matters to me. If I was working in the industry, I would have to, maybe if I have time for research, I would have to research things that I would be paid only for research that contributes to the organization.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same if I was in government. And as a teacher, they just want to see me as a professor, sorry. They just want to see that I am contributing to the wider discussions.
Yeah.
And so that is definitely a benefit. And then I get all these holidays,
That's definitely a plus.
It's a plus, yes.
Yeah. What should students honestly consider before choosing this path?
Yeah. So I wouldn't be an economist if I did not say, think about the cost benefit analysis or do a cost benefit analysis. Ensure that you are knowledgeable about the different types of academic roles because there are academic roles at liberal arts schools, at regional universities, where you will not be able to do as much research. You may not have as much resources to do the research that you would want to
Mm-hmm.
as an on. So you have to make sure you understand what your interests are, and then based on your interests, what the potential benefits are for working at different schools.
Yeah.
Also, if you're working in academia, as anywhere, you have to make sure that you are a lifelong learner. And so you are adapting to the changes that are occurring. Some states, they are no longer requiring tenure, right? Or they're no longer hiring tenure individuals for a tenured position. And so the security that we would have in academia as immigrants, to have this job for life, maybe in the next couple of years will be something of the past. Right.
Honestly, being a tenor is one of the attractive things to have in academia because
Yep.
of the job security that comes with it.
Yep.
So, wow, if it is being taken away, that's a lot to think about.
Yep.
Interesting.
I would have to, and maybe, as a complement to this interview, you can go and identify which states are no longer hiring.
I'll find a link and attach it to
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
That's
But
interesting.
yeah, so I would say, you need to think about that. And that would definitely influence where you look for jobs. And understand that, in academia, you have to keep researching in order to maintain your job. You have to keep providing that service in order to maintain your job. And so, does this align with your skills or your interests?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question to think about. And lastly, this is one question that I've always been thinking about. What is one thing that universities should do better at to support international students entering academia?
Yes.
This is not only your advisor, but like at the university as a unit.
Yeah, some universities do this more than others, but understanding that immigrants aren't just concerned about finances or arriving to school on time. You know, there is this thing that they struggle with, their sense of self, their identity. They are embarking on this new culture. And so I think a lot of time faculty members don't take that into consideration, that emotional strain that
Mm-hmm.
international students are experiencing when
Mm-hmm.
they are grading or interacting. And so I think if it is that universities can provide that support,
Mm-hmm.
ensuring that, so I liked at K-State,
Yeah.
there was a lot of investment, a lot of support in these clubs. So you had like the African Student Union, and they were open to not just Africans, but providing that sense of community for international students. That's not
Mm-hmm.
something that is everywhere. And
Yeah.
I think, sometimes when we see them missing from classes or we see them showing up late, then, we're just thinking that they're not caring. But very often it could be that emotional struggle, missing
Mm-hmm.
home, not understanding the time difference or what is required here. We just said that just how you interacted with your professor in our
Yeah.
countries were different from here. So just
Mm-hmm.
understanding the cultural differences and
Yeah.
providing support for that.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much. My takeaways from this interview were academia is not a linear path. It comes with all kinds of things. So you have to be very strategic before you even go into it. Publishing is great, but it's not everything. And also, mentorship is a survival. It's not a luxury. Everyone needs a mentor. And especially for immigrants, that is what will help you push forward with your field of studies or your profession. And lastly, building connections and networks is what every person needs. And that is what is going to push you ahead than your peers who are not doing so. So thank you so much, Dr. Dacass, for all these great insights that you've shared with us. In conclusion, I would say that if you are navigating academia as an immigrant or international student who wish to be in academia, we want to hear your story. Submit all your experiences and questions to my email. Now, don't forget to watch and listen on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, or anywhere that you listen to your podcast, and share with anyone who would also love this episode. Thank you once again, Dr. Dacass,
Yes.
for giving us your time and giving us all these great tips in transitioning from being a graduate student into academia.
Dr. Manu, thank you so much for creating this space. I am so happy I was here.
Thank you. Wagwan.
Wagwan, what good.
Okay. See you guys on our next episode. Bye for now.